Alright, it's March 28th, 2017. It's about 8 degrees Celsius here in Flat Rock. I got some crows crowing. And I've noticed the bees are flying around for the first time in a long while. And this is a 3 deep colony, you can see here. And I suspect the bottom deep is completely empty, and I think the middle deep might be completely empty as well. I've noticed that this cluster, it's basically been up in the top part of the hive all winter, which is unusual. But, you know, they seem okay. They've got some dry sugar in there and some pollen patties. And I've noticed in the past few weeks that the cluster is heading towards the back of the hive more than to the front. It just might mean that there's more honey in the back, on the back of the frames. It doesn't look like a large cluster, but it's hard to tell. And if it's a Russian genetic cluster, they can be small until the weather warms up, and then they react quickly to the warm weather, and they just explode very fast. So right now they just might not be that impressive because it's still cold. But the plan today is I want to experiment with maintaining single brood chamber colonies, which is 1 single deep instead of 3 or 2, which is traditional. I've been watching a lot of videos of some people in similar climates to Newfoundland who manage their bees with a single brood chamber. They just put the brood chamber on the bottom, put a queen excluder on top, and then just load them up with honey supers on top of that, and that's it. And they even winter them like that as well. But anyhow, this is just 1 colony. I'm going to give it a shot. I'm going to experiment. And today, it seems warm enough that I could crack open the hives and do an inspection if I wanted to. If it was a bit warmer, I'd pull out the frames and take a closer look. But I'd rather just crack the top box off and move it over there and call it done. And that process will work out fine, I hope, if the brood is contained to that single deep on top. If the queen has been laying in the 2nd brood chamber, then what I will do is just I'll move that box and I'll just put 2 brood chambers over there instead of the 1. Or maybe I'll just make up something on the spot and do something completely different. But the plan right now is just to crack it open, not move the top. The top is full of bees. All the bees are clustering up top, attached to the inside of that inner cover. It's a big mess. You can't really do much with the bees when they're like that. But I can just lift the whole thing up and move it. So that's what I'm going to do. And hopefully it won't be a bad thing, and the bees will be all right. So let's see how she goes. And the first thing I'm going to do, just to make this a little bit easier on me, is I'm going to plug up this entrance with a cork. And all these, I have 3 holes drilled into this rim, and now they're all plugged up. So there's no bees coming out of there. They won't be in my face. They might come down below, but I think they're homed in on the top of the hive, so there might be some flying around there, but they're at least not going to be in my face. So I'm just going to crack it open right now, and hopefully all the frames between the top and bottom deep won't be too stuck together, and it won't be too much of a hassle, and the bees won't come pouring out and make a mess. But we'll see. I'm going to unplug this. I'll plug it up just before I do it. I don't have any smoke. Whoops. And I don't have any spray. So if the bees are mad at me, there's nothing I can do about it. This could be a really bad idea. We're going to find out. So I'm doing this hoping that the brood chamber isn't split into the 2nd deep. If it is, there's going to be loads of bees pouring out, and you're probably going to see me running. But it seems like most of the bees are clustered up top. So let's see how she goes. Yeah, it's full of honey. No bees down there, so they're all up here. There's a few bees down there, but not many. Ooh. This is heavy. Lots of honey. It's a very heavy box. So they got tons of honey. Oh, baby, do they ever. Oh. See the benefit of using all mediums. Squished a few bees, I can tell. Yeah. Not 100% happy. But alright. So, let's take a look. Alright, don't know if I recorded any of that. Looks like the batteries might have died. Anyhow, we've got that hive over there now. I can unplug this so they can move about. I'll unplug all the holes so they can feel free. See them doing the thing down there. There's a few bees up here. That's about it. So, interesting. Let's see what's going on with these bees. My guess is there's nothing. And if they're on this side of the hive, it's because this is where the sun is shining right now, and it's the warmest side of the hive. So, and I have no smoke. Just gonna hope they're in a good mood. And I'm curious to see what's in these two boxes. If it's just full of honey and they're just ignoring it. If I had to feed them over the winter or not. There we go. Let's see. Lots of bees. Not too many though. Oh, usually when you see all white like that, you're thinking royal jelly. But I don't know about that. There's granules of sugar in the cells here. So they've been packing that away like they would honey stores. I'm guessing. And they've got some honey there. Looks like dark honey. It's not too moldy or anything. So this is basically a honey frame. It's got syrup in it, but it's a honey frame. I'm going to dig into the rest of this hive and see what I find. At first glance, you'd think that was the royal jelly. And looking down, I see what looks like to be a frame of honey and sugar syrup. So my guess is this colony is well fed and didn't need any food from me. So let's go take a look. So this is interesting. It's a solid frame of honey, and you can see there's little bits of granulated sugar in there. That could be granulated honey as well, but it looks like a combination of sugar and honey. That's my guess. And it's solid, so these bees are not close to starving, at least yet. So here's another frame of honey from the hive. It looks like most of the frames are like this, just completely packed with honey. And you can see they've got this sort of a little layer of mold on them because I think the bees have just been up in the top chamber and they haven't been on this honey in the winter. But this is not a big deal. They'll eat through that, no problem. But I got lots of that on the go. These bees were not anywhere close to starving. All right, so there's that first frame that I took out of the medium deep, or the middle deep, and that's a pretty good frame. And the whole second deep was basically packed with honey and sugar syrup. Now we're going to go check out the bottom deep. And we use our Italian style hive tool with the little pry bar on the end of it. Get the first frame out. Okay, this is what I expected. Completely empty, drawn comb. Nothing unusual about that. So the thing is, like, you can, now we've got this white substance that you can easily mistaken for royal jelly, but it's sugar. So these guys did fine. I think I gave them sugar syrup and they didn't need it because they got extra sugar syrup that's uncapped that they haven't touched in the bottom box. And this is the thing about the 3 deep hives. I think if you wanted to, you could just leave them alone and not doing anything with them, and not steal their honey or anything, and they can survive year after year because they have plenty of room and plenty of room for honey and typically though, you know, there's this impression that you think, oh, if they have 3 deeps, they're going to use all 3 deeps. They're going to fill them with honey and bees and everything. But they don't. They just use what they need. And in this case, the bees have used just the top 2 deeps and a little bit of the bottom one. But they're using it for storage. They're not clustering in there. There's no sign that these bees have clustered in the middle deep of this 3 deep box in the winter at all, because the honey in the middle deep isn't touched. Most of this stuff in the 3rd deep has a little bit of wet, uncapped sugar just in the top area. And that's it. This is empty completely. So this was never filled before the summer. And so, you know, they could have gotten by with just 2 deeps and it would have been fine. But the 3 deeps, at least they got room and all that stuff. So it's all good. And now I got some bees and some sugar down here in the bottom. Let's see. And there's not a lot of bees. So I am, when I open up this colony, which is now a single deep colony, later on, in a couple weeks or whenever it's warm, I'm curious to see how big that colony is and how big their cluster is. Like how much honey they have and how big the cluster is. Because right now, they're just, it's so strange, because it's like I think it's like a wet, I think this is the typical behavior of these dark queens, these dark Russian queens, that they go into winter with a small cluster, and they come out of the winter with a small cluster, lots of food, hardly eat any food, and which you can see by this colony, it's just got a full deep of food that I'm probably going to use for my other bees now. And then once it warms up, they just go crazy. Then the queen starts laying. But right now she's not in high laying mode because it's just not warm enough. And I think the Italians, they're the ones that are more likely, or seem more likely perhaps, just guesswork here, to react to the changing in the daylight, the longer days. Because everybody talks about, you know, once the days get longer, the queen starts laying more eggs. Maybe that's true, just in a general sense, but I think the Russians hold back though. They may warm up a bit, but they don't really get going until they know the spring is here, pollen is coming in, nectar's coming in, let's go. Whereas I think the Italians, they build it up and they just keep building, whether there's anything there or not. Once they get going, right? And which is tricky too. They both pose specific challenges, but anyhow, this looks great. There's what's inside. And these bees are really nice today. They're not stingy. I have gloves and a veil on, and I don't need it, which is always nice. I find that the bees are always the nicest and most friendliest in the spring. Right now, they're not bringing in any wild nectar or pollen. I will check once it warms up a bit, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing coming in. I've got dry sugar in there for them, and you can see some of that dry sugar fell to the bottom. And I've got some pollen supplement in there too. These are the dead bees from the winter. And they don't all fall out the bottom front, they just fall wherever they fall. And you can see there's a few of them in there, sort of half dead. But yeah, as long as the queen isn't there, I'm happy. And it doesn't look like the queen is dying. When the queen is checked out, the first thing that happens is these bees just start pooping all over the place. And I think you can argue that once they start pooping all over the place, that's a sign of nosema. And then they all die. But I wonder if the queen dies for whatever reason that has nothing to do with nosema, and then they all just lose their will to live, their purpose for being, and they just lose it. And they just, all their instincts, their hygienic instincts, and all their natural survival instincts just go out the window, and they just poop and do all the wrong things, and then basically die. And here's this frame. You can see here, I'll cut in here and see what we can see here. I can get this camera to focus. There we go. I'll cut into this and just see if there's any honey in there. No, you know what? That's white. So that's capped syrup. Oh, there you go. Yep. Yeah, baby. Yeah. Whoops. So I gave them some cap syrup last fall, and this is from the middle deep, and I guess it worked. But anyway, it's not honey. And this is another tricky thing with some beekeepers. If you feed sugar syrup to bees that are collecting and storing that sugar syrup in honey supers or any kind of supers or frames that you might eventually harvest, you don't know if you're getting pure honey or a mixture of honey and sugar syrup. So you better be careful with that. I also know people in the States who just feed their bees sugar, harvest it and sell it at the farmer's market and call it honey. So you gotta watch out for that kind of thing. These bees are like super, like I'm waving my hand in front of them and they don't care. Let me just see if the queen is here though. I don't think so. I'm pretty sure she wouldn't be hanging out. These bees are really chilled out. They're just, yeah, they're not in a panic. I'm just going to leave this out because there's no other predators right now. There's no wasps or anything that are going to dig into this honey. It's just bees. So I'm going to just leave it out and let them do what they want with it. And when it gets cold enough, they'll go back into the hive, and then I'll just take the honey away. So this big 3 deep hive was living in a single deep all winter long. That top deep, it's where they hung out. And they didn't go down to the bottom deep at all, and there's no signs that they even touched the honey in the middle deep. So there you go. So let's see what happens next. But now, because this is a single deep colony, I've got a full deep of honey, packed full deep of honey that weighs a ton, that I can use either for these bees, or I can add them to one of my other colonies that could be weak for any reason, or add them to these bees to feed these bees. So that's a big bonus. Or I could just take the whole thing and flip it on top, and they'll be fantastic and good to go. But I'm trying to experiment. I'm going to try to just get them used to living in a single deep, get the queen laying in the single deep throughout the whole single deep, and have the honey just on top of the hive. And that way it's easier for me to assess what's happening in the hive, because I don't have to crank open 2 big deeps and get down to the bottom to find out what's happening. Just look into one box and you're done. So and the bees don't seem to mind, at least the bees from the videos that I've seen online. So anyway, I'll take a few pictures and call her done. Alright, well here's the final product. So a 3 deep hive has been reduced down to 1 deep. That deep is the top deep where the bees have been living all winter. This is the medium deep, or the middle deep that I took off the hive, and it's completely packed with honey. Every single frame is solid with honey. This thing weighs a ton. I broke my back out lifting it up. This is one of the frames from the middle deep. This is not a typical frame. The typical frame was completely packed from edge to edge with honey and syrup. And I've got that sitting there in front of the hive just so that these bees can slowly find their way back in. And you can see here they're scenting their way back into the hive. And I'm going to leave this stuff, even though this is honey, and normally you don't leave honey out. There's nothing out. There are no wasps or anything else that's going to attack this honey and chew it up and rob it out. So I'm just going to leave that there for the bees for now, and I'll put it away later on tonight. Over there we got a cat. Oop. And that's it. The bees are really well behaved, and it's a strange colony in that they lived entirely in the top box of this hive all winter long, and there's no sign that they were ever in the bottom box or in the middle box which is packed with honey. And the bottom box had a little bit of sugar syrup in it, but not much, mostly empty drawn comb. And so I'll check on them again next week just to see how they're doing. They've got some pollen supplement and some dry sugar in there. It's still going to be a while before there's any natural nectar and pollen coming in, so I may need to feed them, but if I do feed them, I'm going to feed them this honey that's sitting in this box right here. I'll just pull out some frames and give them honey. So anyhow, pretty cool. And this is the old bottom board. You can see some little bit of wood chips. Those are little wood chips that are from the moisture quilt that I have on top. Some of the chips sort of leak into the hive and the bees just sort of toss them down to the bottom. You got a few dead bees, not many, and some leaking honey and water. And a lot of black liquid, which is basically water. And then that's normal. Sometimes, perhaps I think it is with the Italian genetics and the honeybees, there's more dead bees on the bottom board, but I think the Russians, which I think what these bees are, the darker Russian bees, they go in the winter with a smaller cluster, and therefore not many bees die throughout the winter, and you don't have these big carpet of bees at the bottom come April. Yep. The next warm day, I'm gonna pop the top off and take a look, but it hasn't been warm enough for these bees to do much of anything except for cluster. They're clustering underneath some dry sugar that I have in there, dry sugar cakes. I have some pollen patties in there too, and I don't know if they're eating them. They're not right now. They don't seem to be right on top of the honey or the pollen patty. So I don't know, but that just might be because they need to stay warm and they just can't expand out to where the cluster or to where the pollen patty is. So here's what's going on inside. So there's the pollen patty, and there's the sugar back there. So they're about, they're not up front, right? And you can see there's no bees right here the bees are clustered underneath the frames. So there may be more bees than I can see right now, that's all. But I don't know. It seems like a small cluster, but I also don't see poop in the hive or anything that signals that there's anything really bad happening. So I'm going to close the door.